Can everybody hear me? Yes, I can hear myself. Welcome everybody, thank you for coming today to the ePortfolio Practices at UQ Models of Use seminar. So we're here today to tell you a bit about the models of use in the ePortfolio system throughout the university. We'll give you some examples of the way that the ePortfolio is currently being used around the university, and hopefully give you some ideas about ways in which you may be able to utilise the ePortfolio in your programs. So for those that don't know what an ePortfolio is, so the broad definition that we use here at the university is that the ePortfolio is an evolving electronic or online resource that acts to record, store and archive the artefacts of learning and reflection for an individual learner. So this can then be the ePortfolio can then be used to demonstrate their professional and personal growth, and used to provide examples of their work and then help them to plan for future levels of professional development that they may require. The current onboarding process for the UQ ePortfolio, so if you do wish to onboard the ePortfolio, basically it is a 6-month lead-in to use the ePortfolio. So we take you through a process where we will initially meet with you and we will take you through a readiness meeting where we will take you through some of the features of the ePortfolio so that you know what it can do. And we'll also discuss in that meeting what you want to get out of using the ePortfolio. You'll then move from there into pedagogy, where a learning designer will help assist you with your pedagogy, designing assessment instruments, making sure that the assessment will work inside of the ePortfolio. After that, it will then move into configuration, where we will go and build the portfolio for you. Part of that will also, we'll then demonstrate it to you, get you to test the configuration so that it is ready to then go live to students. We then move on to the training of students, staff and tutors in how to use the system so that they can effectively use it in their course. And then as part of the process, we also have a community of practice where we get together once a month to share use examples of the ePortfolio and to provide details about updates and discuss the use of the ePortfolio throughout the university. So currently we have 4 different practices for the ePortfolio at the university. So we have the developmental model, which is about tracking student performance across indicators over a set period of time. We also have recently piloted the collaboration space, which is a student-led collaboration space inside of the ePortfolio, which allows groups of students to work together to create a piece of work. We have reflection practice, so the ePortfolio is really great for developing student-led self and peer reflective practice, so that one is quite a powerful model. And then we have recently been rolling out resources for the showcase model, which is where students can then showcase themselves to potential employers and show off what they can do for employment purposes. So first off, we are going to discuss the developmental ePortfolio. And so we've got Dr. Norman Ning from Health 1000 course coordinator, who's going to give you a bit of a talk about his experiences with the developmental model.
Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, because they're recording it.
Yeah, recording. Okay. So just pardon me while I get wired up. Okay. Can you guys hear me? All right, so my name's Norman, and it's my privilege to be the course coordinator for Health 1000, Professions, People in Healthcare. And I guess I will just quickly go through my journey of using ePortfolio embedded within Health 1000. and hopefully you'll get an insight into how we've actually utilized it in terms of the developmental process. So a really quick, brief overview about Health 1000. We are a really, really large course, so we pretty much comprise of 14 different programs from 6 different schools. It's a faculty flagship course, and it's what commonly most of you would have known as a common course as well. And that's the breakdown on the right there, showing the number of students from each of those 14 professions. So we ended up finishing the semester with 1,366 students. It is probably the largest course that I've ever coordinated, and all of a sudden I can now smell the roses again. I got my senses back, I can taste food, and because the semester has ended. So I'm really happy that we got there eventually. But pretty much, I guess the philosophy of Health 1000 is about perspectives on health, interprofessional education, collaborative practice, the Australian health system within a global context. So what did we do in Health 1000 is we, in line with, the UQ strategy with blended learning, as with the UQ to U, our courses are, Health 1000 is really a blended and flip mode, all right? So, and for the success of a flip and blended mode, I think we all have to acknowledge that students have to play their part. Because if students actually don't, do their homework in that sense, or don't prepare for the in-class tutorials, what's going to happen is you're going to have a really, really terrible learning experience for both the tutor and also for the students themselves. So what we did, we thought was, from the feedback that we got from 2017 in our first inaugural run of Health 1000, was that online engagement was a problem. And I think with most blended and online sort of centric courses, you'll find that online engagement is something that's always been a constant challenge. So we thought, how do we actually try and increase this and make this better? So together with the team, and we sort of knew that 2018 was the year that we were going to actually embed ePortfolio in as well. So we thought we'll use ePortfolio as a tool to try and encourage weekly online engagement with the content, and that works hand in hand with, the in-class learning activities. So it was really, depending on the week's content, some of the activities were around reflective in nature, about reflection and how to be a reflective practitioner in health. But other questions were really about, the content-specific areas for the course, and that really, helped to clarify and also expand and also provided that platform for richer discussions within the class. So this is just a quick snapshot of what we did. It's basically a link on Blackboard as you would. So on the students' front, it actually just appears as a normal link on Blackboard. It's nothing different for them. They just need to click on the weekly activity. And then using Blackboard as well, we were able to also upload whatever associated resources connected with that particular activity for that week. So, in actual fact, it was an assessment. As we all know that, currency, this is currency for students. Students are very outcome focused. And we had to incentivize, this sort of engagement of the ePortfolio weekly activities. And so each activity was actually just 1%, but that meant that students were actually doing the work in preparation before coming for the tutorials. This is another snapshot going into the activity itself. When the student actually clicked on it, this is actually an instructor's perspective. But what we have here on the left is the activity itself, and again, you can embed links for the activity where students can click to external resources to actually help them with their answers. They put in their text box, and then on the right there, this really just allows us to provide feedback for the students. I've personally used this feedback, as a way of building rapport as well. Because when you have a lot of students, most of the students don't have time to engage, with their teaching staff. So actually rely on a lot of the responses here to also try and frame our in-class discussions. So I do refer to a lot of the information within the ePortfolio. So I think our tutors have also given me the feedback that it has helped in terms of actually trying to frame our discussions in class. So it's not something that's tokenistic in nature. We don't just tick and flick in its sense, that we do actually spend some time and look through some of the students' responses there. And then students get an impression that, oh, the tutor is actually looking at my answers because you actually picked out certain phrases or keywords. Oh, I see that you talked about this. Well done, on this and that. And so tutors get that sense that, okay, the students actually understand, oh, these are actually getting looked at and getting read. So my experiences, we'll start from the left. 5 minutes, okay, to go. So you can see I would not consider myself, I guess, a really tech-savvy person in terms of on the frontiers of using innovation in my teaching, but I try my best. All right, I remember the team, the Health 1000 team, and we had our very first meeting with Sam and Nathan in this very building about 12 months ago. This was me. I was like, oh, come on, do we really need to have ePortfolio? And because it was a faculty course, it was sort of like a mandate in a sense for me as a course coordinator to look, come on, this is a flagship course. We need to show that we can actually use the most innovative tools within our course. I'm like, okay, I'll take on the challenge. So this was me at first, and then right at the start, I said, I only want to use a very, very small aspect of ePortfolio, something that I can manage on a scale of 1,400 students. We had so many new things happening in 2018 for our course. So having ePortfolio as another additional matter for me to consider was I guess, quite daunting. And so I said, we'll just use the assessment, create a couple of weekly assessments, and that's all we'll do. Nothing else about ePortfolio. So baby steps. And that's me on the right. Hopefully, you say it's happy days. There's still, I guess, a steep learning curve. It still continues to carry on. But I think we have actually got rid of a lot of the teething problems in the first couple of weeks of the semester. And for next year, to really try and maintain the momentum, I'm not going to try anything new. I'm just going to say, let's try and perfect this. Let's make it better. And let's see how we go for the second run. Because we want to have the dust to settle before you keep trying out new stuff. And then your tutors are not, oh, we're doing something else new again. We're doing something else new again. So there needs to be some time, I guess, for it to sink in and we get a hang of it. So what are the benefits? I guess for us, increased online engagement, which was really one of the problems and issues from the 2017 inaugural run. For me, it provided an opportunity to build rapport with students through consistent feedback provided. So every week, I'm actually providing feedback to my students. And they're getting all this feedback, and they know that the tutors are talking about and discussing based on their discussions and their answers and responses that they've actually put in. It ensures to a certain degree online resources and links have been accessed by students, and I think that's a problem, isn't it? Sometimes you go through so much effort, you put up those resources, you put up a lot of information, your lecture slides, complimentary reading, supplementary reading, and then all of a sudden you're like, are the students actually really looking at this stuff? So for us, it's in a way of actually ensuring that, our students actually do need to look at this particular resource in order to answer this particular answer. Scaffolding of learning activities. So basically that builds into the in-class learning activities. And from a tutor's perspective, it was more organic and the ease of facilitation in class. I guess with interprofessional sort of facilitation or teaching is really quite different because your curriculum is actually within the class. You have to acknowledge who are the students there, where their background's from, what are their lived-in experience, and you build your answers around those sort of responses. So it was a very organic process, and having those responses on hand before a tutorial gave you the preparation and gave you the framework to try and actually, deal with those in-class discussions. And really, it enhanced students' experience, flexibility versus structure. We know that students like that flexibility to be able to just access their activities at any point that they want and be able to complete the assessments at 3 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning. I don't even know how students operate these days anymore, but they have the flexibility there. Some drawbacks, increased workload for staff. All right, so, in reality, it means that my tutors and myself would need to spend a bit more time looking through some of these weekly responses. But I have to say that the benefits do outweigh the drawbacks, because if you're really trying to encourage and foster those rich learning experiences, then I think, having to spend a little bit more time, as we all do as altruistically as academics, to try and foster that sort of learning environment is a really important one. And I guess it gets easier. So after we, finished up all the teething problems, I think it got to a point where Nathan stopped receiving student submissions, and so did Jess. All right, so what are the tips for your other stuff? I know I'm running out of time. I guess baby steps, ePortfolio features to suit your course. You don't have to use the whole gamut of features involved in ePortfolio. Consider your ePortfolio readiness. So like myself, like that crying baby, I wasn't very ready. But I think it's something that you need to think about where you're at and how you're going to actually put that in within your course. Find a sweet spot. All right, for us, some people may look at us and say, oh, ePortfolio is underutilized in Health 1000. Well, it works. I don't care if it's underutilized for Health 1000. It's a capability that we are getting used to, and I think it's benefiting us for the purposes of within our course. And of course, like what Nathan was talking about, the onboarding processes. Make use of the onboarding processes, hound them with questions, email them, have meetings with them. The team is there to help you and to support you and to make sure that they hold your hand through that process. Organize orientation training sessions. Nathan, he pretty much did that. He told me, all right, you need to do this for your tutors. You need to understand that tutors need to go familiarize themselves with the framework and so on. Provide clear instructions for both students and staff. Now, regardless how many thousand times you do this and repeat this and have the links available, you know that some students do live under a rock and they have no idea. They'll send you an email at week 13. Where is the link for ePortfolio? And I'm like, it's week 13, all right? So, of course, whenever you get information, always direct students back to the same source, I guess, which is the library for any e-learning help in terms of e-learning services. I think that's it. All right, so thank you. Sorry I went over time.
Okay, so the next section we're going to have a quick run through is a bit of an overview of the collaborative pilot. So, as I said, in semester 1 of this year, we piloted the collaborative space of the ePortfolio. So we called out for volunteers and we received volunteers from 4 different courses, which was a nice spread across different faculties. So we had a tourism course, we had a communications course, a chemistry course, and a course from medicine with varying levels of student numbers. So that gave us quite a nice spread of courses to be able to test out some of the features that are available in the collaborative space. So the pilot, the main objective of the pilot was to evaluate the feasibility of the ePortfolio's collaboration space as a viable, centrally supported collaborative tool. Some of our secondary objectives were to identify what was positive about the collaboration space and to then identify any areas that may have required improvement. So basically, what is the collaboration space? Well, the collaboration space is a student-driven section of the ePortfolio. So each of the group's collaboration spaces are created by the student. For the pilot, we did require students to invite either their tutor or their course coordinator to their collaboration space as well, so that we had oversight of what was happening in the collaboration space, and we could then obviously troubleshoot issues and also be able to provide feedback to students throughout the semester. So the collaboration space has an overview page where the student can see what's been happening in the collaboration space over the last day. There's information about accessing their portfolio for the whole group. And then there's information on any replies to discussions and what's been happening in their discussion board. So basically, the main objective of the collaboration space is for the group to create a collaborative portfolio of work. So this here is an example of a medicine group. So they had a ethics group assignment. So this is just the main page of the portfolio. So they've customised the look of their portfolio, and then they've completed the sections that were set out by the course coordinator, which is a little bit hard to see on the page here, but there's links there to different pages of their portfolio that contains additional information. So some of the areas outside of just the portfolio section of the collaboration space includes a file library where students can upload files and share files between each other. They can check files out, make modifications to those files, and then check them back in so that other students can then look at them and use them to add to their make modifications if they need to. And it's all stored in a space where students can access. There's also a history section which tracks user activity inside of the ePortfolio, so it helps to keep accountability for the students. So as the students are going through, the portfolio is tracking what they're doing in there. It's not full 100% click activity, whatever they're doing. It is basic user activity. But it does help keep students honest in terms of how they're making contributions to the collaboration space. And then we can also pull out user summaries about what activity they've been involved in inside it as well. One of the big features of the collaboration space is a to-dos list. So students can go in and allocate to-do tasks to students within the group. They can set due dates for these tasks, and the student will actually get reminders to say, hey, you need to do this, make sure you get in and do it. And then when the student finishes their task, they can then go and say, yep, I've completed that, and it crosses it off from the list. So it's a way for students to help keep themselves on track throughout their assessment. So some of the positive aspects that came out of the pilot of the collaboration space, one of the biggest ones is it has integration with Learn.UQ Blackboard. So the ePortfolio is accessed by clicking on a link through your course site, and the information students sign in just goes via Blackboard, so that makes it really easy for students to access it. Some other feedback, fewer troubleshooting compared to tools such as Blackboard wikis. So the students didn't seem to have too much problem once they had received some training. Easier staff access for downloading and accessing the students' work. Because the staff were part of the groups, they were easily able to go in and see what was happening, and they could download any of the student work as needed. Some of the courses and tutors use the discussion boards quite well for providing feedback throughout the whole process to the students. So they were active on the discussion boards, responding to student questions, providing ideas. So that was, the teaching staff found the discussion board quite useful. It provided access to staff and mentors for project teams, and all that communication was held inside of a UQ managed platform. There was transparency with the history function, so staff could keep an eye on making sure students were participating in activity and using the system, so that if there was any conflicts, there was some information there that could assist the tutors or course coordinator. There are some areas that do require some improvement. We do live in the age where students have great access to like Facebook Messenger, WeChat. So that was a lot of feedback we received from students was about, we want instant messaging. We live in the age where I can just send an instant message to my group member. They actually didn't particularly enjoy the discussion boards because they found it was quite slow having to log in to go and check a discussion board. Students also complained a bit about the file library, the check-in, check-out function. They're used to using Google Docs where they can have synchronous authoring of documents, so that the students didn't like that feature, that only one person could work on the file at a time, that sort of thing. It's the same with the portfolio, the finished portfolio. Only one person can edit a page at a time. Again, they want the ability to be able to all work on it and add stuff at the same time like you can with Google Docs. And a lot of unnecessary clicking to access the collaboration space within the ePortfolio. So what are the next steps now that we've finished the pilot? So we are currently just collating all the feedback that we've received from the 4 different courses. We'll then go from there to look at what features we would like to request from the vendor. and then we'll lodge those features with the vendor in the hope that they will implement some of those features so that improvements can be made to the collaboration space. We have found that the collaboration space does meet some of the needs for a collaboration tool under certain circumstances, but there are areas where it is not a match. So obviously we need to wait and see what improvements are made by the vendor in terms of whether it will become more, if we'll promote it more readily across the university for collaboration. Okay, so next we've got Susanna Brady, who's going to talk about reflective practice in the ePortfolio.
Clicker. You're going to do All right. What do I click here? Just the red one?
That one.
That one, okay. Hello, colleagues. I can only assume at this time of the afternoon, if you're here to listen about reflection in a portfolio, you're super interested. So hopefully I can entertain you. As a midwifery lecturer, we're really interested in reflective practice within our profession, and I know many of you have that as well. But for years I've struggled with how do you know students are reflecting? And I've often been left with the idea that they're cutting and pasting from somewhere. And they're just telling you what you want to hear. So I came up with this idea that I'm going to tell you about today, and a little bit of a demonstration of it, because that's always much more fun than listening to me to talk. So John Dewey said we learn from experience. We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on our experience. And this is what we were doing in this course, MIDW 3105, Woman-Centered Care and Practice, which I am the course coordinator for. So this course prepares students for professional midwifery practice and their role of midwives in supporting women in their choices around childbirth. Woman-centered care is the underpinning practice philosophy, but it's interesting because my PhD is on this topic, so I could talk for a long time, but I won't. It's an elusive in definition and practice application. So what it means to one midwife is not what it means to another midwife, one woman, another woman, and so on and so forth. So this course ran for the first time this year. We had a new curriculum that we were doing, and it had 38 dual degree students in it. So some of those students had never done midwifery before, so that was quite interesting. So I have listened to my colleagues talk about storytelling this afternoon, and we do it a lot in midwifery. So narrative pedagogy underpins a lot of the learning in midwifery, but we tend to use narrative pedagogy to develop what we call the art of practice. So that kind of elusive thing, what does the midwife do that makes her a good midwife? We learn through storytelling and sharing. I was very concerned. This was the first time in 11 years at university I'd been in charge of an online course. And I thought the students would not engage at all. So I was in kind of a panic mode. How can I get the students to be engaged? So what I came up with was this idea that I needed to see them. So I would make them do videos and video reflections. And I did 10 weekly video journals that I awarded 5 marks each, because I wanted them to appreciate that I thought that this was a worthwhile activity to do. I had e-learning assistants, of course, to help me set it up. Nathan's just about on my direct dial. Of course, we wrote instructions for students, but they were way smarter than I was, and they learned it really fast. We had a task sheet and a marking guide. And actually what I did, I was so nervous that this wouldn't work. I actually put them all in a room and said, look, I really just want you to take your iPhone at the end of the shift and talk into it and tell me what happened. And I thought they would panic. They went, oh, sure, that's easy. It's not easy for someone my age, but it's easy for them. Like Norman, I spent lots of time giving feedback because I was invested in making sure that this worked well. And I couldn't believe how well they responded to my feedback. And so every week I would ask them to kind of do a little bit more. So the expectations increased as the semester went on. I do find the ePortfolio an excellent platform for loading and marking. It's really user-friendly, so if you're sitting in the audience and you're a little bit frightened of it, don't be. If a dinosaur like me can get their heads around it and get it up and working, it's really easy to go with. So what I asked the students to do in the videos was, in a 2-minute video, some of them did go a little bit over time, was a description of the care that they gave on that particular shift, the context. So what was the birth suite like? Was it busy? Was it not busy? Were they working with someone who was supportive of them, not supportive? And then they had to go to both the professional standards of practice and also some evidence to find out why they should change their practice on reflection of what they did. You know, the professional standards say I should have done this, or evidence-based tells me I should have done that. And then, of course, how does that affect your future outcomes? So I have a video of a lovely young student here that I'll play for you. It's only 3 minutes long. And you can see that in this, she does all of these things. But what's really interesting is, unlike the written reflection where it just goes this, and you're sure they cut it out of some journal, she actually goes back and forth between these cycles and manages to extrapolate it all and pull it together. What was interesting is this is the third time I've talked about this activity, and each time I've shown a different video. So it's not hard for me to find amongst a small student cohort a demonstration of how learning occurred, which is what every teacher wants. So hopefully this will work. This is a lovely young lady.
Today I learned about the importance of the International Confederation of Midwives Code 1A, which is sharing information to enable a woman to make informed decisions about her care. So I was working on at the antenatal clinic in Anala, and we had a woman with a non-English speaking background come in. She had gestational diabetes and she had been managing it really, really well. Her blood sugar booklet was almost flawless, and she showed she had not gained any excess weight, and her fundal height was a perfect 36 centimeters at 36 weeks. So there was no indication, the midwife and I sort of looked at it, and there was no indication of any sort of macrosomia or that the baby was large for gestational age. As a part of this antenatal appointment, we were to contact the obstetrician for a consultation regarding the possibility of the routine possibility of an induction of labour. So the obstetrician sort of phoned us, hadn't ever looked at this woman's case before, and was like, the policy is to induce women with gestational diabetes at 38 weeks due to an increased risk of shoulder dystocia. My midwife and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, well, the baby's not too big, so I can't understand why there might need to be any shoulder dystocia. Anyways, regrettably, we didn't do anything about it, and I've come home and not stopped thinking about how I could have been better in that situation. So I had a bit of a read around, and I've sort of looked around, and the American Journal, an article I read from the American Journal of Obstetricians and Gynecology states that induction of labour can increase caesarean sections, which was exactly what this woman didn't want, and that the NICE 2015 guidelines, which are the ones that Australia generally follow, states that GDM women with no present complications should be offered a induction of labour or a voluntary C-section as late as 40 weeks and 6 days. So I've sort of walked away from this being like, I really, really need to be a little bit more informed so that I could at least question the obstetrician and sort of double check that that's, is that what she wants to do, and is that, what the women wants. And I also need to make sure that I'm sharing all of the information with this woman in a way that she understands so that she can make informed decisions about her care. So, yeah, thank you.
Sorry that it went out there. That's okay. So you can actually see that student thinking, and the fact that she has to articulate what she's thinking about. And first she starts by reading something, and I know some of the little nice young people put words up there and they read off it, but after a while she forgets about that, and she has to start thinking about everything. And I love the way you can almost see the wheels of thought turning. So what were the really good things that I saw? How am I going for time? Yeah. What were the really good things that amazing number of things came out of this experiment that Susanna wanted to do. Identity verified assessment. I actually got to know the students really, really well. And the other day we just finished up the semester together and I said to them, I feel so connected to you. And that's because every student had to listen to 10 videos of them. And so I felt like not only did I know their face and their name, but I knew how they thought about it. Is that 5? 1, okay. You could literally see the students reflecting and the thought processes going through their minds, and I just really love that. I'm also coordinating the clinical course, so one of the really unexpected outcomes was if they struggled to articulate reflection in this course, I sent the clinical supervisor to find them in the clinical area to see how they were going there. Because if they couldn't articulate care, then I was worried about them in the clinical course. So that was really good. The students really enjoyed it. It was much better marking than marking a stack of assignments. I would put in my earphones and just sit back and listen. And most of the time I had a cup of coffee and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave them lots of really good feedback. The reflective practice that they learned in this course, they have just transferred to other courses. They just do it, and that's exciting. And one of the things that we don't struggle with, but it's hard, is to get them to develop professional practice in line with their practice standards. And so we have in our portfolio, another section of our portfolio, they have to address every practice standard in that portfolio. And so the next step is to use these videos as evidence of how they address that practice standard. Courses that, so in your courses, if you're thinking about it, any course that you think reflection might dovetail with evidence, it's really good. My advice is to seek e-learning help and ePortfolio help early. And yeah, that's about it. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you. You?
Okay, so the final one we're going to discuss is the showcase. We've got Associate Professor Susan Rowland here to have a chat about how science is using the showcase model. So I'm just going to hand over to Jess first, who's just going to give a bit of an introduction to the showcase, and then we'll hear from Associate Professor Susan Rowland.
Hello, my name is Jessica Tai. I'm the HAPS e-learning coordinator. So I'm just going to briefly provide a quick overview on the showcase. So Showcase ePortfolio enables students to gather evidence of learning, synthesizes learning to make connections of what they've learned, and develop self-narration to create holistic representation of themselves. It can also package students' attributes and artifacts together in a stylish, portable format that can be shared online. Personalization is the key here. It enables students to draw upon their learning from all aspects of life. Students are able to self-order or curate a particular persona, journey, or image of themselves that they want to portray and establish their online identity. So, library from next year has put together a 90 minutes training for students that will step through with students of how they can create their own Showcase portfolio. And now I'll pass on to Susan to talk about how they have used Showcase in the Students as Partners project.
So science has a grand plan that every student is going to have an ePortfolio. You may well be aware now that the ePortfolio is available to every student in the university. Now, I certainly know that not every student in the university knows that they have an ePortfolio. I was talking to a student on Saturday who's about to graduate, and I said, "Oh, you should make an ePortfolio," in my way. And she goes, "What?" No idea. So this is actually quite an ask to have every student have an ePortfolio. And there's also quite an ask in terms of thinking, how do we integrate that into courses? So at the moment, the way we're approaching this is to actually go outside the courses by having an overarching framework for employability that Faculty of Science is using, and we're going to ask the students to work into this framework around their coursework. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the framework, and I'm going to tell you about a Students as Partners project that we have running at the moment that's helping us work out the kinks with this approach. This is the Faculty of Science's employability framework. It's adapted from Dawn Bennett's Literacies for Life project, and we are working with Dawn in collaboration to do this. You'll notice that the things that are on this framework are abstract. These are really meta skills. This is something that's quite a struggle as scientists when we look at something like this to say a student should be able to talk about how they recognise, understand and manage how they feel, because what happens is when we as scientists look at this, we go, but where's the list of things that they can do, like pipetting or measuring something or graphing, right? So this is our first hurdle, is trying to get us as scientists to think about employability this way. But this is the framework that we're using, so this is what we're going to use now to think about employability for the students. The second part of this is wrapping this into every course. I'll get to that in a second. So in the Faculty of Science, this year we're doing Students as Partners projects. And the faculty has given away about $95,000 for Students as Partners projects, and Dino's Employability Centre has given us $50,000 as well. So we've got quite an investment in Students as Partners projects. We have about 65 students doing projects as partners, and I have 3 of those students working with me. And what we have them doing is building from scratch an ePortfolio each using this framework. And what we are doing is getting the students to do, if we just go back just after that, thank you. Thank you. So the students and I actually did the library training in the beginning so that we had some sense of how to use the ePortfolio. And then what the students are doing is just building their portfolios using this framework, but also just using what they have in their minds in terms of how they would like to portray themselves. Because when I first started this, I had an idea that what we were going to do was build some kind of Faculty of Science structure and all students would use that. And then I discovered that wasn't the approach at all that the ePortfolio project was going to take. In fact, every student was going to be able to build their own portfolio the way they wanted to do it. Now, this is kind of different to some of the other options that you've been seeing where the portfolio is built into a course as a tool. What we're doing is the students are just going into the portfolio and using it. I've learned a bit about the structure of what the portfolio looks like. From this, I still would not say I'm an expert at all, but what I've discovered is that there's a kind of a document centre where the students can put all of their stuff, all of their artefacts, things that they can do, their photos, their pieces of text, whatever they want, and they can pull them into this showcase to build something for themselves. So that lovely picture that Jess showed, I'll just go back here, right, so over here on the right here, this is one option for the way it can look, and I was sort of thinking that what we would do is our students would drop stuff in and then it would come out like that for all of them, but that's not the case at all. I know, it was like a bit naive. So actually what the students are doing is essentially building their own portfolio. This is what the front page can look like. You see down there on the left, there's an index. That's the page structure that the students build. So they're building a website, essentially, and then they can have whatever they want showing up here. And they can build it any way they want. So building the portfolio is an enormously reflective approach for the students. Yes, 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. So our 3 students are from 3 different backgrounds, 3 different programs, 3 different GPAs. We wanted to get students who are representative. We didn't just want the super high flyers. And so we have an international student, and then we have a student with a GPA of about 5.5 who's doing a dual arts science degree, and then we have a third student who is doing a science commerce degree, I believe. What we are also doing in the ePortfolio is Nathan is building for us. Yeah, Nathan. Nathan is going to be building for us this set of capacities into a kind of a green lighting system. This is the system that they have for vet science at the moment, where the students need to actually be able to tick off a set of competencies, and so by the end of their degrees, the students should be able to tick off each one of these. So we're actually going to do that for each of these things. So each one of these things, the students should be able to produce something against that, and then what you can do is go into this thing and put your evidence behind that. So essentially that goes into your document library, and then the students can pull all of these things from their document library against this framework of what they can do. So Jess has been building a guide for the students based on the students' feedback. So what happens is that we did the training, now we have regular meetings with the students, and they're building their portfolios just using the basic training that they had, and they're coming to us and telling us about problems that they've got. And so we've had problems around learning how to structure, and we've particularly had problems around copyright. Now, what do I do? What kind of pictures can I show? And so Jess is now building this really nice guide that's going to help the students through all of those problems, and that way we'll actually be able to provide that to any student in the university, not just science students, so this is a general guide. And our students are reading this for us and giving feedback on how it's working for them. So we've actually got 3 students with quite nice portfolios at this point, and they've done it essentially with very little help. So the lovely thing is that it means you can do this for any of your students as well. Is that the last picture? Yeah. Not sure. Jess is going to talk. Just put this down here.
So I guess also from Susan's students, the main thing is we need to teach the students how to self-narrate with all their artifacts they have, all the evidence. We still need to show them the ways to do that. So, okay. So now we would like to take the model of use to the next level, looking at integrating ePortfolios within curriculum. This is just a heuristic framework that we are exploring. It's not the only way. So it's open for discussions, and comments and feedbacks are all welcome. Oh. Okay. So technology is driving the global interactions and integrations of people, industries, and governments. It is essential for today's graduate to demonstrate more than disciplinary skills. Graduates also need to demonstrate the ability to interact and integrate with other people's systems and be confident in their personal branding. When we talk about personal branding, it's how you present your uniqueness, qualities, and attributes to others. Branding does not only apply to products. It is how you present or image yourself and for you to market yourself to others. ePortfolio can package students' attributes and artifacts together, as we mentioned before, and create multiple ePortfolios that they can share. It also provides an opportunity to convey personalities and expand the bullet points in your resumes or your transcript. ePortfolio can also facilitate the connections of learning and personal experience for students, so they are better equipped to recognize and develop their unique identities or personal branding and be competitive in today's workplace. Due to the expectations of industry to employ accomplished graduates, students need discipline knowledge connected with what they have learned through professional development opportunities and experience. Yet curriculum tends to be compartmentalized into separate courses or units, formal or informal learning, theory versus practice. It is challenging for students to connect their learning. Students may miss connections between different areas of their experience. So how do we help students to make connections? We're looking to integrative learning. People might not be familiar with the term or how to interpret that into curriculum. As you can see, the definition varies and is yet to be clearly defined. Melissa Peake from University of Michigan has defined these 6 dimensions through a study of 620 students in various learning environments. It was published in the 2011 International ePortfolio Journal. The result from the study found that students can achieve gains with such approach, but support is needed in the curriculum design. Current curriculum covers dimension 1 to 5 quite well. However, more work needs to be done on the 6th dimension. In a lot of cases, develop a professional identity is usually addressed at capstones or final semester or year as students are about to graduate. ePortfolio has potential to facilitate all the dimensions. However, current ePortfolio tend to be used in a linear way. So that's why we look into the integrated ePortfolio model as it pushes the boundaries and introduces extracurricular elements, subjective moment of personal development, and encourage self-authorship and personal branding before final semester or year. The aim of this model is to facilitate transfer of knowledge from school to students and enable students to make connections at personal and professional level. The model is based on a common program duration of 4 years. Go by the principle it's easy to condense or reduce, then expand. Students progress from exposure to immersions to competencies and mastery. Students begin at the knowing stage and progress to the doing stage. The model covers different skill sets, the disciplinary skills, people skills, learning skills, and personal skills by integrate all models of use. In year 1 exposure, the knowing stage, students provide the knowledge for students to acquire the knowledge. Quite straightforward. In year 2 immersions, students synthesizes the knowledge. School guides students in a controlled environment and for students to start collect artifacts or evidence. In year 3 competencies, students interpret the knowledge and incorporate personal attributes in the field of study, making their study relevant or being able to relate at personal level. In year 4 mastery, the doing stage, students start to join the dots between professional and personal connections and establish personal branding. These activities can be interweaved within ePortfolio. Looking at possible application of the model, in first year, students to articulate their current perceptions of professional identity or personal branding. In second year, educators guide students in developing self-narration with hypothetical identity or branding purpose or scenario. In third year, educators mentor students in preparation for the exit portfolio with discipline artifacts and establish their own purpose, target audience, and goal for the portfolio. And in fourth year, students refine their exit portfolio and have their own brand to convey themselves to the industry and start networking. Sounds easy? A quick summary. The integrated ePortfolio approach facilitated transfer of knowledge from educators to students and for students to make connections. It scaffolds development of self-narration as students progress through their study. It focuses on students building their unique professional identity or personal branding. It provides opportunities for educators to work as partners with students, emphasizing on personal learning with tangible output, a useful portfolio at the end of their study when they graduate. The connection made between professional and personal identity can also develop into lifelong learning. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. So we do have some time for any comments or questions. So if you do have any questions or comments, we're happy to discuss those. Otherwise, I guess you're free to leave.
I'm in a course for master's program in applied linguistics. And we've had a course for about 15 years called Portfolio and Synthesis that students who don't do a thesis, they take it in their last semester. And they go back and they look at all their courses, they pick out the assessments what was meaningful for them, and they try to put together a portfolio that they can actually present in lieu of a thesis to prospective employers. And we're really keen on the integrated model, but we adopted the model from an institution in the United States with a similar program. And what we didn't adopt was when the students enter that program, it's also a master's program, they're assigned an advisor from the beginning. And every semester they meet with that advisor and they talk about the portfolio. And then in the end, when they graduate, they have this portfolio, very, very polished piece of work that they can go out. And we found the issue we have is it's a workload issue, it's a staffing issue, is how we track the students over the program. When in fact, the way we have it now is a 2-unit course in their last semester of enrollment, which can be the third, the fourth semester, depending on what program they're in. And we find trying to manage that, we're really keen, really interested in doing this. I think our students, we found the feedback from the students is they really, really enjoyed it. But it's that managing the process across the whole term of one, short of assigning one
I didn't explain. Thank you. That framework that we're using in science, we're kind of using that in an attempt to manage that very process that you're talking about. So I'm Deputy ADA for Future Students and Employability in the Faculty of Science, so I sort of have this overarching dream. I don't know if it's going to work yet. But what we are doing next year is a trial of starting the process of, we have 4 courses next year that signed up for it, where they will put this as an assessment item in the course, a very small, like 1%, where the students have to choose one of these literacies and pick something from the course and use the SEAL process to reflect on how that thing from the course developed one of these literacies. And that's why Nathan's building us this green lighting system, so that the students will be able to go in and go, well, this is the one I pick, boom, this is the one I'm going to do the reflection on. We're actually going to do it as an education project, so that we'll be able to see what is it the students see as developing parts of their literacy. But the goal is to, long-term goal is to have this as an assessment item in every course, so that they will naturally develop their portfolio over the course of their degree, not through any sort of additional work, it's just part of their course assessment. So they will manage it themselves. We won't be sitting there managing it, but they will be able to green light stuff and see where their holes are. I hope it can do it for us. I hope the course coordinators will come on board. That's the idea, to get some evidence for next year. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this. So one of the things that we've tried, so you know about the SEAL process, obviously, that UQ uses. So one of the things that we tried was a reflection using SEAL and this framework. And what we found was exactly the same thing that you've just described. We got to the end of the SEAL, and so, you know, situation, effect, action, learning. And then I did my own reflection and ended up with a sort of self-flagellation thing about how I hadn't dealt very well with the situation, and I discovered what I'd learnt was I work better on paper, right? Which is not really employable at all. And so we thought, well, actually, we need a couple of additional letters on the end of it, ED, evidence, describe. So I had a talk to Anna Wilson, because Anna developed the SEAL process along with Andrea Reid, and I said, hey, what about putting an extra ED on the end? And Anna